and we are live for this regular meeting of the Sonoma City Council, June 8th, 2020. Do we need to report out from closed session, Jeffrey Walter?
No, there's nothing to report out other than to indicate that the council gave your city attorney direction.
All right, great. We did indeed. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to this regular meeting of convening and calling it to order. I just want to go through a little bit of process of the public comment here for our virtual city council meetings that we're holding under Governor Newsom's, almost said Brown's, emergency order allowing for virtual meetings of cities throughout the state of California. So we will be doing public comment in two ways. You can either write us a letter, and so the letter is acceptable from any time, basically from the start of this meeting until the close of public comment for that item. If you write us a letter, we will read it out loud, and you can submit those to public comment at sonomacity.org. So if you're a little speaking shy, you can use that method. If not, you may also call in. So you can join in our Zoom, which is available on the city's website. Go ahead and join in our Zoom chat. And if you're in the chat, raise your hand, but don't do it physically, do it virtually. We'll catch that hand raising. We'll bring you into the meeting and allow you to speak with us. Both of them are going to work in the same fashion that public comment happens in a live session. You'll get 3 minutes to public comment. So I apologize if I interrupt you to give you the minute time and the 30-second time. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to let you know that your time is running short. And it's also true of if you're reading, if you've sent a written public comment, we'll only allow 3 minutes worth of reading. So Latania's a fairly fast reader. So if you keep something relatively short or reasonably short, we'll get a lot of comment in through that. If you are calling in from the phone, you can raise your hand by dialing *9, and that'll indicate to us that you've raised your hand, because not everybody is, on the computer these days. So great, covered that. The other piece is that because we're acting virtually, there's a couple additional items to talk about, and that's Zoom bombing, a new term for us this year. If we get Zoom bombed and somebody hacks into our meeting, kind of takes it over, we'll go ahead and shut that meeting down and try to bring it back and remove the individual who's been Zoom bombing us. If we do shut down, no further actions will be taken, and we'll try to jump right back in the meeting where we left off. If we're not able to restart the meeting will be considered closed and no actions will be taken, and we'll have to restart these items at a later date. So that about covers everything. If we could get a roll call, or actually let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. We could do the Pledge of Allegiance right now, and we'll get started with the meeting. We have a virtual flag to bring up. Here it comes. There's a dog or a door going on back there. All right, here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, until the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I said until it stands. That was a miss there. I caught it. Great. So we'll go ahead and have a roll call vote.
Sure. Councilmember Cook.
Here.
Councilmember Hundley.
Here.
Councilmember Harrington.
Present.
Councilperson Agrimonti.
Here.
And Mayor Harvey.
Here. All right, great. We did the report on closed session. Can we get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved. Second.
Ooh, 3 council members up for the second. We'll give it to David Cook with the second. And let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Cook.
Aye.
Councilmember Hundley.
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington.
Aye.
Councilmember Agrimonti.
Aye.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
The
Beautiful.
motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
A great agenda to vote on. Wonderful. So we're going to go on. Comments from the public at this time. Members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. It is recommended you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less under state law, unless otherwise permitted under the Ralph M. Brown Act. The merits of the matters presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the City Council at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at the time the item comes up for council consideration. Upon being acknowledged by the mayor, that's me, please begin by stating and spelling your name. Thank you. And we've got two here. We've got Lynn Marie DeVincent and Steve Aker, Martin Wheel as well. Looks like Lynn Marie is up first. Lynn, welcome to the council meeting.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
I'll get my timer started. We can hear you.
Excellent, thank you. I hear an echo. Hello, Mayor, Council, and staff. And I wanted first to thank you for persevering through all the difficulties our community is struggling with. You know, the public often says, we elected you and you work for us. And it's true. You do work really hard for us. And if I was really your boss, I would give you all a big bonus because you are our first class responders. I too work for basically no pay for the community and consequently can feel overworked and underpaid. 2 years ago, I didn't know what 1G was from another, but tonight I want to use these precious minutes when I can address you all at once to tell you this. The packet you've received from Mark Mathaler and I is a miracle. I hope you've gotten it and had a chance to look at it. Our attorney, Andrew Campanelli, is like Moses. He took the vast ocean of obfuscation, the spun verbiage from Verizon, and parted the seas so we can calmly walk through the tunnel to the light at the other end. Just take a couple pages at a time and you will discover that Verizon has been overly complicating the cell tower project. I know we've told you that we thought our appeal was a symbolic gesture of protest from our community who opposed these towers, and that was true then, before the pandemic hit, before Zoom enabled us to have access to each other in unprecedented ways. Mark and I heard Andrew on a 3-hour Zoom session with 5 other tech attorneys and realized that contrary to what Verizon had told us, there are valid legal reasons to deny the permits that do not prohibit them or put the city at risk to the degree Verizon threatened. We live here. We get to decide which leaf blowers, which size buildings, which cannabis dispensary is best for the community, and how much cell service is best for the community. It's simpler than Verizon wants us to believe. So whether it's because of loss of property value, no significant gap in coverage, or lack of common aesthetics, you, the city council, do have the power to say, no, thank you. We appreciate Verizon's efforts, but their product is unnecessary, degrading to our property values, and out of place in our beautiful town. Thank you again for all you do.
You,
I'm
Lynn
done.
Marie. Thank you. Next, we got Fire Chief Steve Aker. Steve, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor Harvey. Can you hear me okay?
Just fine, loud and clear.
Perfect. Thank you. So Mayor, council members, staff, and community, I wanted to take a moment today and I want to first say thank you to Council Member Agrimonti for the prompt over the weekend to speak to everyone today. I know we've been continually faced as a community with a lot of different challenges. The most recent has been a big one in a lot of different ways, and I know that's kind of an understatement, but with our COVID situation, and just as we appear to be getting out of that, unfortunately, I have to share as part of my responsibility as fire chief, the fact that we are now right in the middle of fire season again, just as we're coming out of COVID. And I wanted to take a couple of minutes tonight just to remind everyone to keep their guard up about fire season, to make sure that we are all doing our part to cut down dry weeds, dead grasses, and to manage dead fuels on our properties. Just over the weekend, we had 2 100-acre fires just southwest of the Sonoma Valley here, wind-driven. And we also had 2 more vegetation fires today within the valley. So fire season is definitely here. I want to encourage everyone to get out and cut those dead weeds and grasses in the mornings before noon, and definitely not on high wind days. Your fire department, the Sonoma Valley Fire and Rescue, it has started its weed abatement program again. It's an annual program, and complaints or properties of concern can be reported to our department in a couple of different ways. The first and the easiest way is to go to svfra.org and go to weed abatement and fill out an online reporting form. If there are any challenges with that or people cannot do that, then please call our department at 996-2102. Again, 996-2102, and our staff will be able to help you through the process of a report. The last thing I want to mention, and this pertains to those who may be listening and participating in this meeting who don't happen to be City of Sonoma residents but live just outside of the city. We're in the process of starting up again our collaborative program on vegetation management, and the Sonoma Valley Fire and Rescue Authority does this together with the County of Sonoma and with our fire service partners, CAL FIRE. These inspections and this education program is designed to reduce vegetation in the wildland urban interface through education of property owners and inspections of a determined number of properties each season. These inspections will be starting the last week of June. So I encourage everyone in the unincorporated areas to kind of be on the lookout for a mail notice and other opportunities to participate in this program. And with that, I want to thank everyone for their time and their diligence in keeping our Valley Fire safe.
Thank you so much, Chief. We appreciate you coming on and for all that you do for our valley. Really appreciate it. Next, we have Martin Wheel. Martin?
Good evening, Mayor Harvey and members of the council. I'm Martin Weil, W-E-I-L. I'm been a Sonoma resident.
Apologize.
Well, fine, no problem. So I take it you can hear me. First of all, I'd like to just repeat Lynn Marie Vincent's thanks to all of you. We don't, as members of the community, say thank you to you who serve as volunteer positions. And I know it's a lot of work, and I think all of us appreciate it. If we don't say it all the time, please know that I think everybody in town appreciates your work. So I'm requesting that you as a city council undertake an official review of the use of force protocols by the Sonoma Police Department. I'm aware that our local force is governed by the county sheriff's department, and I don't know whether local practices are modified separately from these. And I'll also add that I don't have at this time any information as to whether there have been excessive use of force by the police department. But that said, I think all of us have been horrified at what we've seen routinely on TV these last weeks and months as regards the seemingly unnecessary violence against Americans, predominantly African Americans, by law enforcement across the country. The police nationwide, I think many of us would agree, have steadily become over-militarized and have adopted use of force policies that could be called excessive. I say this as a citizen who deeply appreciates the role of law enforcement and am grateful to the men and the women in this job who often must put their lives on the line to protect all of us. But I think we can do better. Cities and towns across the United States are coming to that same understanding that force de-escalation leads to improved safety outcome for the public and for the police. I did see recently where Sheriff Essick and Chief Rodriguez posted on Facebook a response to a scorecard on local use of force protocols published by the advocacy group 8 Can't Wait. And I'm grateful that they took the time to clarify some of the matters in that report. I took the time to review the policies referred to in the Sonoma Sheriff's Protocol Manual, and I was disturbed to see that chokeholds, specifically short duration carotid holds, are still permitted. Now, I'm not versed enough in policing to claim that Campaign Zero, the name of 8 Can't Wait's recommendations, is the model for this council of this city, but they seem to me to be a good place to start, and I'd like you to do that. Benjamin Franklin said, "Justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are." I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. And I would note that the sheriff put out a statement today banning carotid holds from the use of force policy throughout Sonoma County as well. So, yep, it's a great move and a good move in the right direction, and proof positive that protests are working and do work. So I appreciate that effort, and let's continue on. And there are more changes and more to do. And can't respond too much to this because it's open public comment, but appreciate the comment. Thank you. Great. We're moving on to the consent. Anybody else for public comment? Did we have written public comment, Latanya?
No, Mayor Harvey, no email public comments at this time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, so we're moving on to consent calendar. Moving on to consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are continued to be routine and will be acted upon by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of council, staff, or public request specific items to be removed for separate action. At this time, the council may change the order of the agenda. Anybody wishing to pull an item off of consent calendar? Any members of public wishing to pull an item of consent calendar? I guess we got to move to public comment on the consent calendar. Do we have any questions of staff from council? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open public comment. Seeing no one rise for public comment, I'll go ahead and close the public comment period. Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar here?
Motion to approve this consent calendar.
Nicely done. Seconded by Madeline Agrimonti. Let's go ahead with a roll call vote.
Councilmember Cook, Councilmember Cook, Councilmember Hundley,
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington,
Aye.
Councilmember Agrimonti,
Aye.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
And mine was an aye, my thing got stuck.
Great, thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Unanimous vote for the consent calendar. That never happens. All right, moving on to regular calendar. City Council, item 6.1, discuss, consider, and possibly take action to 1, select commercial cannabis retailers or for retail storefront and retail non-storefront businesses to move forward to phase 2, site review and final vendor selection process, and 2, direct staff to prepare amendments to the cannabis business regulatory ordinance. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Harvey, members of council and community. Let me just kind of give a brief overview and then I'll hand to David Storr, our planning director, to go into more detail. So as council is aware, we have been on a journey in the last 6 months or so to move forward with a cannabis dispensary for one retail and one non-storefront dispensary. And I just wanted to kind of review where we are in the process. So in January, council opened an RFP. In March, there was initial paper ranking by HDL, our consultants. There was then a proposal review committee made up of city staff with HDL, but then also did rating of interviews. And then we came on May 27th to the council and brought you 5 finalists. Of those 5 finalists, 1 dropped out, Mercy Wellness. So you had 4 presentations on May 27th. We then waited for tonight in case we had any appeals from individuals who were not selected as the top 5. We received no appeals. So now we are back with you for you to select the most qualified finalists. And what will occur, and there is not a magic number here, You have 4 finalists in front of you. The next step is to determine who do you want to move forward to what we call phase 2, which is the site review and then the final vendor selection process. So I will let David Storer go through this in greater detail, but the next process would be for whichever candidates you move forward or applicants to then select an actual site. There would be a review of that site, and then it would come back to council for a final decision when you would award a conditional certificate to an applicant at a specific location. And then they have to go through the land use and potentially building permit process, depending on what site is chosen. So with just a few other quick things, there was a community benefit chart that staff put out on Friday. There have been some questions and concerns raised about that chart. I'll let David Storer speak to that as well. And just as a reminder, again, the way this original process went with the request for proposal was when the applicants turned in their paper process, the application basically said that there was no additional information that was to be added. During the presentations, there was some additional information or supplemental that was added by some of the individuals, some of the applicants. It is a council decision whether you want to consider that information or not, and Jeff Walter, our city attorney, can speak to you more about that. And there were also a couple of policy questions that the council had, policy or process questions the council had at the last meeting. And an answer to those questions was outlined in the staff report, but again, David Storer will go through those. So with that kind of high level overview, I'll turn to David Storer and I will take this chart down. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Actually, could you leave that up just for a moment, please? I'm
Sure.
gonna go through that, and then I just want to also ensure that we have Matt Eaton from HDL on the line. I think he said in a text to me that he was online, but just want to make sure the audio is working for him, that he's been allowed to join as a participant. Matt, are you available? So Wendy, if we can, Matt Eaton is on the line. Wondering if you could allow him to be a participant, and I'm not sure what the correct word is that allows him to participate as a speaker.
Yes, I'm looking. Oh, go ahead, Tanya.
I just promoted him to panelist. He raised his hand. That was awesome. I could see him.
Thank you.
I can hear you now.
All right, thank you, Matt. So council members, we're of the opinion right now that we have almost 30 to 40 people that are part of the proposers tonight that have their teams ready and available to answer questions in greater detail than you were able to ask at the meeting on May 27th. As Kathy mentioned, we did present as part of the conclusion of phase 1 and 2. We did provide the top 5 finalists, of which one, Mercy Wellness, withdrew their application. So we're now at the position of step 3 in that first phase, where you as a council select your top applicants to move on to phase 2, which is a site review, where they will have 45 days in which to select a site and also provide me with a zoning verification letter, which they'd received from me, all within that same 45 days. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. When we last made our presentation, we were on May 27th, and there was 1 day left out of the 10-day appeal period. No appeals were received from candidates 6 through 9. We are now down to 4 very qualified proposers, and we're very fortunate as a community to have that option and flexibility. In our staff report, we did provide a community benefit chart that talks about employment, community contributions, and economic incentives. And today I've been in contact with all of the proposers about that particular chart, and they will be providing supplementary, not new information, but supplementary information. Now, notwithstanding that, the council may ask additional questions above and beyond what has been provided in that chart relative to those categories that I just mentioned. So tonight, you can also ask about qualifications, experience, their business plan, security plan, safety, and again, labor and employment, which is somewhat tied into community benefits. So tonight, your council may choose all 4 of the proposals to proceed. A reduced number is not required at this point in order to stratify it to one retail, one storefront retail, and one retail non-storefront. That can come later in the process at the conditional certificate process, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. As I mentioned, the phase 2 on the chart that you see here, where it says June-45 days, the proposals will go throughout the community, and I know some of them have been knocking on doors already, but that will basically take, as if I've done my math correctly, to around July 23rd, where they would need to supply me with the zoning verification letter to make sure that everything is tied in with respect to the buffers that your council discussed last summer and other Title 19 zoning issues. Sometime in August, a brief presentation will be made to the city by the proposers that are left in this phase 2 with respect to site suitability, neighborhood compatibility, traffic congestion, public and patron parking, and other site and safety issues. And at that point, or after that point, or even on that same night, your council can issue a conditional certificate, or a CC, as we've laid here on the chart, to one proposal that would like to do a non-storefront or a storefront. If you choose to do that, you also have the ability to do none at all. Once a proposer has been given a conditional certificate, they would then drop down into that second of the 3 blue tiers there that you see, where they would have a year to get occupancy, whether they're occupying an existing structure that needs to be converted through TIs or from the ground up, which seems a little bit improbable, but there may be that property out there where that can occur. And so they would need to go through the planning commission process, get their building permits, and then have the inspections occur, again, all within that year. And they may request for additional time throughout that process if there's a problem with that. A question that the city council asked on May 27th related to, is it possible for more than one retail storefront or non-retail storefront to allow to be moved forward, when they did not actually request that in the submittal materials. As we've mentioned in the staff report, Coastal was the only one that checked both boxes. However, during the PRC interviews, other proposers did voice an interest, with the exception of Spark, and I'll let them address that tonight to ensure that I've got that correct. This can be done. More proposers can go to the retail storefront and non-storefront, but it would require an amendment to the city council that the city council would need to make in the municipal code. That can be done through 2 meetings of the council, and then we would wait a 30-day period in order for that ordinance to be effective, where we would actually change the code. On page 3 of the staff report, I do need to make a point there that we did have a concern with CEQA. Having reviewed statute, staff has learned that the exemption would be available to us until summer of 2021. So there would not be a CEQA prohibition or problem when it comes to extending the opportunity to have more storefront or non-storefronts, as the case may be. We did have 2 proponents that checked the box. Element 7 did not make the top 5, and so that's really a moot point. But again, Coastal did provide information in their application regarding non-retail as well as the retail storefront. And it would be staff's determination that that would be unfair to those that filed the correct paperwork if we were to allow, through some administrative process that's not in our ordinance, to open that up. So
Quick
again,
question on this point.
sure.
So is it, when we approve the retail storefront, my understanding was that anybody who had a retail storefront could also do delivery. If they didn't fill out the delivery piece of the application, are they able to do a retail storefront with delivery?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that. I'll let Matt respond to that, but I do want to just say that was actually the end of my presentation. So that was great timing. Matt, can you address? No, not at all. Matt, can you respond to that, please?
So retailers by law are allowed to deliver as long as local agencies allow it. And so you can have a storefront business with delivery. The non-storefront retail location obviously has delivery. However, it is prohibited from having customers on their site. They may not have a storefront business. So storefront businesses have storefront and delivery. Non-storefront may only do delivery with no customers on site.
And at the moment, the only person who qualifies for the non-storefront delivery is Coastal, because they're the only individuals who applied for that.
Of those that are remaining, correct.
Great.
So as I said, Mr. Mayor, that concludes staff's presentation. Jeff Walter and Matt and I are all three of us are available to answer questions if we can.
Do we have questions from council?
No, I'm glad that thank you, Mr. Mayor, for asking that question, because I was wondering, I didn't see the same as you have just identified for 2 for 1.
Thank you, Madeline. Rachel, did you have a question? I saw you turn your camera on, so I'm assuming yes.
I'm here. Yes, I do. So as far as, my understanding is that the applicants can speak during public comment, or as far as when or if we have questions for them, how is that flow going to work?
Yeah, thanks for the question. We've spoken with all of the proposers and let them know that tonight is the opportunity for the council to ask questions, and it may come in any order. They're not making any formal presentations tonight. So if you would like to hear more about their business plan or community benefits, the council may ask anyone, and we'll have them all available to answer questions as the council deems appropriate.
So then after public comment, we'll just all be in the room together and we can just, okay.
Okay, so we're gonna add them all into the room. We're not gonna kind of like add people in and out.
I'll have to defer to Wendy on the technicality of that. It's a little bit complex. Wendy, do you know how we can do that? LaTonya?
Well, we could do it a couple ways. We could bring in one group at a time, or we could have everyone who's an applicant raise their hand and we could add them all in.
It seems, I think there's two ways to do this, because either we're gonna maybe go, maybe we'll ask Coastal a question and then want to ask something of somebody else, and there may be this kind of need to bring people in and out. So I think either we bring them all in, or we have representatives where we'll ask the question and then the individuals who are going to answer that question could raise their hand or comment in the chat that they'll take it, and we'll bring that single individual. It doesn't make sense for me to bring a whole team in, because it's like some of these are like 10 people, and then bring them back out. I just think it'll be really complex for you. What's the pleasure of council?
Well, I definitely have the same questions that I want to ask each of them. So it would just be whether we go through each one by one, but I feel like it'll probably be more fluid.
I think ideally we would bring in one representative from each group, and we would ask them to select who is the speaker for their group. So just, that seems practical to me. So they get one speaker and that person is brought in now. And then if we have questions, they could all respond, and probably we all have the same approach, similar approach, which is like asking the same questions of everybody. So we can give everyone a fair opportunity to give their perspective.
I think that's a good idea. My only concern with that is that it seems like some of these groups are highly specialized, where we have an individual who's really strong in the legal piece, somebody who's really strong in the community benefit fees. And so I want them to have the ability to put their best foot forward. So maybe if we have structured questions, I don't know if we could categorize them and say, we're going to ask community benefit questions now. And then we could bring in those individuals who identify themselves. Now we can ask regulatory or security. Would that make sense? Or do we think that that's too cumbersome?
I would guess, what about just one group as we did on the, when was that? The 8th or May 27th? If we have questions. I have 3 iPads in front of me, one with the 27th agenda, because I don't have copies of that. I have tonight's meeting and then the Zoom. So I would like this to be as least complicated as possible. I'm open to whatever anybody suggests.
Sounds like it's already complicated over there.
I guess, council, if you all have standard questions for the most part that you want to ask people, which is kind of what I'm hearing from a couple of you, then it may make sense to kind of bring a group in, bring an applicant team in, ask their questions, have them exit. Again, not knowing the preference of the council, part of it was really trying to understand of, you know, how much additional information you wanted, is it consistent, is the same. So if it's going to be consistent questions you're going to ask across, then we could bring the teams in.
Let's do this. Let's bring in the teams individually for kind of council questions, because if we've got a list to run through, and then we'll do one additional section for follow-up questions where each team will identify one person if there's a need for that.
Oh, cool.
If we feel like we have a need for follow-up questions, then we can bring in one individual from each team, and then they can be kind of the generalist to answer those questions. Does that make sense? Do people agree with that?
Yeah, that seems
not a
good.
good way forward.
So I have a question before we get started, and maybe it's under one of the applications. It's from HDL, I guess. I just wanted to ask something, but maybe I'll ask the applicant.
You're gonna keep us in suspense, Madeline? That's not fair.
Well, yeah, it's a point of concern, and it really doesn't have anything to do with the applicant. It's a judgment that was made, so I don't know.
Do you want to ask it right now since we're in the question period for staff?
Yeah, of coastal, it says point of concern, the applicant selected adult and medical use for both retail storefront and non-storefront categories on the application form. Is that bad? Is that a smarty pants thing? What is that?
That was not part of the point deduction. That was in a section that gave a overview of the application, and was communication between HDL and you, the client, or the city, and it was to prepare the for the interview. So it looks like it was a typo or an inadvertently added, and it was a mistake. It was just something that we brought to the attention, but was not a point of deduction for the application review.
Oh, all right. Thank you. I appreciate your answering that because I didn't understand it. Thank you.
So Mayor Harvey.
Yeah.
So just looking to David Storr, last time we went in one order. Should we go a reverse order? Or what's a, pleasure of council?
Could I ask her we go in the same order, if you don't mind? As I said, I have 3 iPads here, and I'm starting at the beginning where the presentation was made initially.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I can certainly adjust.
I do not mind, Madeline. Let's do it. Let's do it that order seems as good as any. So if it makes it easier for Madeline, let's do it that way.
Thank you.
All right. So do we go to public comment now, or are we doing questions first? I see Jeff shaking his head and then rolling his eyes. So I'm not sure what that means.
I think you should ask the questions, public questions, questions of the applicants now.
Okay, great. So let's bring in, who's our first group?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I can, just to give you the order that we did it last time, it was alphabetical. We did Coastal, Justice, Lighthouse, and then Spark.
All right. And let's just have a standardized order for how this is going to go. We'll go Madeline, Amy, David, Rachel, me, if that works.
Yeah.
We'll do Vice Mayor and Mayor last. Okay. Cool. Sounds good.
I'm ready.
And let's double check to make sure if I'm going to find it incumbent on the teams here, the applicants, to tell us whether or not they've got their whole team there. So please review, look at your screen. Is everybody with you? Do you have everybody that you need? Let us know when you're ready to go. I'm seeing a yes from Devin. Awesome.
We're still waiting on one more on our team.
All right, can you identify them? We got Julianne. Okay, good. They're raising their hands, so perfect.
Great.
We've got this down. It's like we've done it before. We got John L. again, raising their hand. Is that a member of your team or somebody's trying to sneak in?
That's a sneaker.
Okay, all right. John, we'll wait for public comment for you, sir. And we'll go ahead with, we're starting with Madeline Agrimonti for questions for Coastal. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you. I'm under business plan, Devin. And it says here included a pro forma for at least 3 years of operation. I personally like that idea that you were able to have, you know, the money that's available and you projected that. Can you give me a little outline of what you believe is the reason for that?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to kick it over to Julian. Thank you, Councilwoman. We really appreciate it. Thanks for having us today. Julian, if you want to take the lead on an overview of financials.
Yeah. So was your question digging into the financials, or were you asking why we did it that way?
No, I actually think it's a positive for you to be able to tell me that, you know, what you have as you projected the funds that needed to be necessary. So I think the $1,591,000, and is that with the is that 3 years? Is that what we were talking about earlier? Or is that just a number? Capitalization?
The capitalization that we have is 900,000. And it's really, you know, we did the best we could to come up with that number, and we've actually found a piece of real estate that'll fit right within that. But depending on the tenant improvements and all that, without the ability to have property on the front end, we did the best we could. But we have now locked down a piece of real estate, which we're really excited to share with you when the time comes. And 900,000 is more than enough for us to build that out. We built out 7 locations thus far, or 7 different operations thus far, and so we're pretty good at projecting that within a reasonable amount of money.
That's great, thank you. So I just wanted whomever can answer this. The state's mandated track and trace system. I'm sorry, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I can explain that to you. So the system is called Metric, and it's a seed to sale system. So it's how you track the cannabis plant all the way from when it has roots all the way through to when you sell it to the end customer. It's a way to regulate the process all the way from the grower to the manufacturer to the distributor, and then to us as the retailer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see. I was looking at security. That seemed to be okay, and I think I saw confirmed. The confirmed, it says here in labor and employment plan, confirming hiring 90% of employees. I know that was something that the council was interested in. So I think that's, really important to me. And I think I noticed an application failed to show proof of owners, managers have been residents of the city of Sonoma. I'm sorry you're a victim of that. They didn't like it when I got elected. I didn't live here. I've only lived here 26 years. It'll never be long enough. So I'm sorry you've been victim to that as well. The only one I saw that did a great job on that was Vice Mayor Hundley. And she was amazing. So I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me know if there's any other questions we can answer for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madeline. We're on to Amy Harrington.
Hi, I was just wondering, from the approval of the, once you get if you were to get the approval, what is the estimated time period until storefront would open?
So that is a great question. So we chose our property based on that, and we had several locations that we had worked with the landlords in coming up to an agreement. And the property we chose, we believe we can get the construction done and store operational under 6 months.
Okay, and then my, I guess I have a question for staff. So we haven't really talked separately about the, or at length about the delivery only. Are we going to talk about that at a later time, or are we doing all that now since Coastal's the only applicant, or what?
This would be the time to ask questions about that.
So I don't think we really got any kind of, or maybe I just don't remember that we had like much of a presentation about the delivery side of it. And could you just talk about that for what your vision would, if you were delivery only, what would your vision be about that?
Absolutely. I'll dive into that. So from a financial perspective, we would not move forward with a delivery only permit. So the only way that it makes financial sense in cannabis is, and we had a only delivery permit, and it just doesn't make financial sense because of the labor revenue per hour. It just doesn't, you can't get the bottom line to make it work. So we, when we do apply, much like other cities, we apply that in our retail, we have a shared inventory to do both retail and delivery. And that really allows us to be able to make the numbers work. And the interesting times that we've had in the past, our delivery was about 15 to 20% of our business during COVID. And now I feel really propelling forward that it's going to be between 30 and 35% of our business. So in all of our locations, our delivery has gone up over 250%. So it's really, really important to us when we do look for new locations that we partner with the cities, and that we do that we always go for both retail, storefront and non-storefront. So, and now with COVID more than ever, it's very, very important for the consumers in the city and the taxes and everything else to make sure that those two things are in conjunction and work together.
Okay, so then just to clarify for staff then, with this statement, does that mean we have no applicants who want delivery only?
Yes, that would appear to be the case.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
That conclude your questions?
It does.
Awesome. Councilmember Cook.
Yeah, I guess I only have one question. Once you're up and going, let's say you're selected, how many visits per day would make it where it starts becoming profitable?
It's a very good question. So we scale up our labor based on percentage of revenue. So we always have that metric in mind when we are scaling up labor, which is with 280E, the biggest concern in the cannabis industry right now is to make sure that you're able to deal with those metrics and really make sure that you're honing in and paying attention to it. We believe that our per unit transaction will be about $55 a day, and we will start somewhere around 75 to 100 orders a day in the first few months, ramping up to about 275 to 300 orders a day. And by the year 2, it's usually about a 12-month run rate to 8 to 12-month run rate where you're cash positive. So in order for us to be cash positive, we just modeled out our location. We need to be about 300 orders a day to be cash flow positive with the rent rates, TI, and everything that we put into that location.
Thank you.
And I feel that we can get there within somewhere between 6 and 12 months to answer the question a little bit more clearly.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilmember Cook. On to Vice Mayor Rachel Hundley.
Thank you, Logan. So my first question is for your business. So what year did your first dispensary open?
First dispensary. So in the group, we have 35 open dispensaries across the country, but our first one in California, Santa Barbara, was very progressive on their ordinance and getting it and pushing it forward. But it did take a long time to get through the process. As you're seeing here today, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a lot of decisions and going through and making sure everybody's comfortable. So our first one in California opened last year in September, and we had won the license the year before that, but the building permit process in Santa Barbara took nearly a year.
Okay. And so I think you already answered my second question. How many open locations do you have? Is that 35?
On our team, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. And how many applications do you have pending right now for additional locations?
5.
5, including Sonoma. I just clarify that.
Thanks, Kim.
I appreciate the clarification. And so my next question is to the local representative on the team, Mr. Gibblestat. What will your job be in the operations of this business?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. It's good to see everybody. Thanks for bringing us back in. So as managing partner, my job is really to oversee the operation, not from a technical perspective, not from a day-to-day operations perspective, because really that's why I partnered with Coastal. These guys are the best in the business, in my opinion. And so they run the day-to-day operations. My job is to ensure that the business is operating in a way that I would like to see it operating, and that our commitment to the community stays where we need it to be. So think of me as a board member, sort of chairman of the board of Coastal Sonoma, not as the CEO or president or day-to-day manager, because that's not an expertise I have. I think Councilman Harrington brought that up in the initial meeting, that I don't have direct cannabis operational experience. So it's really important to me that Coastal, as expert operators, operate and ensure that we're fully compliant and that we do everything that's required, and that I ensure that we're making sound business decisions, working closely with Julian and the team in front of you to continue to follow our commitments to the broader community. And as you all have seen, my commitment to this community is huge, and our commitment as an organization, I really want to see that come to fruition.
Thank you.
Let me just jump in, if that's okay. One other thing that I'm really excited about. So hi, everybody. So one of the things that I'm really excited for Jordan to work with us on is our 90% hiring commitment. As you guys know, I think that's a substantial commitment, and it really does take us the resources of on the ground people that know the community well and have had success in hiring locally. We are going to work with local partners like La Luz, like SOS, to ensure that we're really getting the message out there to a wide variety of folks. But I do think that Jordan's role and knowing the community really well will be critical to our success in that 90% threshold. So just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Thank you. So who will be the day-to-day manager, or how is that person found?
So day-to-day, we'll have one GM to start, and then we have assistant manager. So as far as like the organizational structure, that's how it'll be laid out. We have a head of operations that will come and get the store operating. We'll make sure that that we hire the individuals that are best for the business, as well as go through the training and all of our standard operating procedures to make sure that it is run, as Jordan said, compliantly and successfully and everything else. So that the individual is Ryan Bashara that will get it up and running for us. And he's been doing this for 12 years in medical and recreational cannabis.
Thank you. And my last question is just for you guys. So you said $1 million in 5 years. So what does that look like?
Thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, go ahead, Julian. I was
going to give it over to you, buddy.
So, one of the things that was really fun for me in this process was sitting down with Julian and with Devin and the team and saying, hey, my family's been intimately involved in philanthropy in Sonoma Valley for 15 years. I'm sure many of you know this. My dad served on the board of HANA. He's on the board of the Ed Foundation. My mom was on the board of the museum and was instrumental in getting the health center to its current location. This community means a lot to my family. And so I really pushed the Coastal team to make this community benefit a top priority. And then I went and I looked at, the 4 areas I think are really impactful for us as a community right now. Obviously, our advisory council can help steer if we were misaligned on one of those. But I think when we look at things like early childhood education, especially in light of what COVID has done to our public educational system, education more broadly right now, when we look at homelessness and the impact of homelessness in Sonoma County at this point in time, these are major issues, and we're a small community. And I think that by putting resources at play quickly as we get open, we can really make an impact in the community. And, we're trying to do this already. And many of I've been really involved in donating meals to SOS, and we're doing a lot right now. And I just think we can do a lot of good, and I'm really, really excited about it. And I'm excited to continue what I've started, what my family's been doing, and just be a partner in the community. Does that answer your question? So
is it going to be just like straight cash each year in kind? Is this including tax revenue? Like the breakdown of it?
This is a cash gift, a cash spend into the community. This is not in-kind donations. This is us getting actively involved in making a difference in grants and other things that can be used for programmatic implementation. So we want to ensure that the programs that people are able to do can be tied back to the funds. And we know that all of us can 2 years from now see the impact that Coastal's making in the community directly through the funds that we're putting into play with these various not-for-profits.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Can I ask a clarification about one of your questions?
Go for it.
When I looked at your website, I wasn't sure how you answered Councilmember Hundley's question, because you said 35 on your team, but I was under the impression for some reason that you only had one storefront that was opened in 2019. So can you just clarify for me, what do you have already?
So Coastal as a brand has 7 operational licenses. We have distribution and manufacturing. We have a home delivery in Santa Barbara. We have San Luis Obispo. We have Lompoc. We have our Santa Barbara store. We have 2 additional stores that will be in our portfolio within 45 days that are operational. One in Seaside, one in Vallejo. And then when I say 35, that's on our team. So Coastal is our California brand, but we have on our team, we have the founder of Native Roots. Josh Ginsberg is a founding partner of the company. Native Roots has 22 dispensaries. They're in North America and they're in Canada. So we brought all of that intelligence on the team, and that's how we started. So when Melante and I founded the company, we hired an attorney to connect us with the best cannabis entrepreneur that she could find, and she connected us with Josh. And so when we founded Coastal, we knew we needed that cannabis experience. So 2.5 years ago, we partnered with Josh Ginsberg, and that's where the 35 total stores in our company on our team come from. But Coastal.
So I guess I'm sorry, I'm still confused. So Coastal, the corporation, has how many storefronts? Just right now, how many do you have?
Retail locations 4, and then
There's
we have
4. Okay, where are those locations?
retail locations. So we have San Luis Obispo, we have Lompoc, which has both delivery and retail. We have Santa Barbara delivery license that's in a different location. We have
all I'm curious about is, where do you have storefronts that are currently open, and when did they open?
That's what I'm explaining to you. So
not delivery. I don't want any. Straightforward thinker. I'm an attorney. So just the places that are currently open that are storefront.
Storefront, we have 2 locations currently open, and two locations that are coming into our company in 45 days that we have in escrow.
And where are the 2 locations that are currently open?
Lompoc and Santa Barbara.
Okay, and when did they open?
Santa Barbara opened in September, and Lompoc opened in January, I believe.
Okay, so one is September 2019 and one is January 2020, and those are the 2 that you currently have.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any other follow-up questions from council? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and ask my questions now. So with regards to community benefits, what organizations do you currently have contact or contracts with, or have had discussions with, and what specific services do you foresee offering? And if you may have kind of answered that question with Councilmember or Vice Mayor Hundley's question. So I think I may switch that second part to, what have you done in other communities as far as community benefit offerings?
Devin,
Sure.
would you like to answer that, or Cameron?
Yeah, I might make note that Devin dropped off the call, but she's raising her hand to be added back in.
Can we add Devin back in, please?
Julian, do you want to, while we're waiting for Devin to come in?
She's in.
Oh, she's in. Great. Thanks.
So Devin, the question was posed about the organizations we're working with in Sonoma, as well as the organizations we worked with historically.
Sure. Well, thank you guys so much, and sorry about that. So in Sonoma, similar program to what we do in Santa Barbara, we call it our Coastal Cares program. Each employee participates in our Coastal Cares program, where they volunteer Their time, we do about 4 hours per week at a specific nonprofit. We have 2 partners in Santa Barbara. One is PATH, a homeless shelter, and one is Unity Shop, which is a local organization that serves underserved populations. It's an awesome organization. They basically set up a grocery store and a clothing store where underserved populations are able to go in and shop just like they would normally, but they don't have to pay anything. So we participate in volunteering with them as well as giving donations on a regular basis. To date, we've donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to the California community throughout our different applications and proposals. And in Sonoma, we're really excited. And again, I do really appreciate Jordan's work with helping me create our community benefits proposal. We worked really hard on it, and I'm really proud of it. And I think that the 4 areas that we really hit on are really important to Sonoma, but also really important to Coastal. Our work around homelessness is a theme that we do across the board and something that we're really dedicated to. So in addition to our general Coastal Cares programs, where we work with a few pre-selected nonprofits on a regular basis, providing donations as well as volunteer hours, we also do things on a regular basis just to support the community. Like this weekend, we supported our community's paddle out in Santa Barbara regarding Black Lives Matters. Additionally, we did over 4,000 masks giving out to the community broadly in Santa Barbara during COVID, as well as all to any customers that came in our doors. These are just some examples of things that we do when we, react to what's going on in the community, as well as the proactive engagement that we do through our Coastal Cares program. So we're very excited. I met with La Luz this afternoon just to kind of further our relationships. And I'm very excited about the potential impacts that we can have there. I've really enjoyed working with the nonprofit community. I've been, Kathy King has been wonderful. And I'm very excited. So thank you all for the opportunity.
Let me jump in there, Mayor Harvey, if you don't mind, and give you some specifics on each of those programs, if that's what you were asking as well.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with early childhood education. We sat down with the Ed Foundation and really looked at how and what the costs were to fund a preschool class. One of the big challenges is preschool, free preschool or pre-K is something that we looked at. So we actually allocated an amount of funds to fund a pre-K class. And so you'll see in our application that one of the grants that we discussed was actually funding a pre-K class of 8 students as part of that ongoing commitment. So we went and we looked at, again, I think to the Vice Mayor's question, we want to make sure that the funds are used to specific programs that we can all point to and see that impact directly. So that's a good example of working directly with the Ed Foundation to determine a program that fit within the budget we could allocate them that would have a direct and meaningful impact on people here in the Valley. So that's one with education. Sorry, was the question? No, okay.
Appears to be some mumbling in the background.
No problem. The second was homelessness. Obviously, with what's happening, there's a lot of dynamic things at play, as we're all intimately aware. We have the homeless camp in Northern Sonoma Valley that was set up. We also have SOS in Haven here in town, and trying to think about how we can help the homeless population most effectively here. I think there's been a lot happening with COVID, and we haven't gotten clarity from Kathy and the team on what the best program coming out of this, 6 months from now will be. So that's a continuous dialogue, and obviously is on our advisory council, which will allow us to be dynamic. One was food security. Mr. Mayor, I know that's a big priority of yours, and you've been talking a lot about it during this challenging period that we've all been going through. And I actually, I heard about a program like this, not in our community, which was providing, it's actually, I learned about it in Napa through Olay. And they have this amazing test kitchen. I don't know if anyone on council has been to Olay's signature, their new facility down in Southern Napa. But in that, they actually have a kitchen where they take low-income families and they bring them in and show them how to cook with fresh produce. And one of the big challenges is both affording and knowing where to purchase fresh produce, but also then how do you cook those meals with those fresh produce items? So in talking to Sal Chavez and Ari, we talked about the importance of providing people good produce to eat and then teaching them how to cook it. So we're working on a program, and obviously the beautiful thing is our 3 locations are staggered throughout the Valley. So we've been discussing a program where we would purchase produce from local purveyors, and then we would give those to low-income families. Think about like a CSA box. but they would be coupled with cooking demonstrations, educational things to teach people how to actually then take this food and make their families healthy meals, as opposed to buying inexpensive prepackaged foods or fast foods, and trying to teach them ways to do it that would improve their overall family health, reduce sodium, things that are major health problems, sugar and sodium being the two biggest ones. So Olay's had huge success with that program. I think if we could introduce a program like that here in Sonoma Valley, I think it would have a really material impact. And then the last one was obviously wildfire. While I don't think what we're going to be able to contribute will necessarily materially change Sonoma Valley's ability to respond to the potential of devastating wildfires, we want to be really thoughtful in our contributions there. We've been in contact with fire chief and fire department to understand where and how these funds can best be deployed to benefit the community. So those are the four primary areas and the direct kind of communications we're having and what we're thinking as far as community impact. I hope that answers your question. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, you're on mute.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Jeff, City Attorney, I have a question for you. I'd like to ask a question not about a specific location, but the approach to choosing a location. Is that appropriate?
I think so.
Okay, great. So when considering a location, what is your approach? What kind of concerns are you thinking about? And what goes into the thought process behind choosing a final location?
I'll take that. So when choosing a location, we always look at parking. We look at the current condition of the building, such as ADA access and all of the things that you need to go through the building permit process, and making sure, and then we analyze that location based on what it's going to cost us and make sure that it's viable for the long term, that we're able to sustain there. The last thing your community wants is to have a dispensary open and not be able to keep its doors open. And we're seeing a lot of dispensaries starting to go out of business in different locations where there's high density of either a small population or a high density of dispensaries. And so we're pretty analytical when it comes to choosing a location.
Can I jump in and add to Julian's comment? We've been talking about it a lot, and it was fun. Actually, Julian Malante and the team came up, and I kind of gave them a tour of Sonoma, and we were going through the pros and cons of all the different areas, and ate some Mexican food and got to spend some time together. And what's really important too is that we pick a location that I believe can be open quickly. Julian talked about it earlier, but there's two key things. One, I think this community is ready to have a safe and good dispensary in town. It's a long travel to any of the dispensaries in our area. And two, I think bringing that tax revenue in quickly and helping this community through a time where our tourism has declined significantly is really important as well. So we've been really thoughtful. And to be honest, I don't know if it's appropriate. I'll ask, and Jeff, you can say whether it is or isn't. Any thoughts from council on their priorities is also welcome. And since we are the first and everyone will get the opportunity to go after us, I don't know if it's appropriate for us to ask a question back, but I will surface the question and let Jeff tell me whether it's appropriate or not.
I think it gets problematic because the council members might not be able to remember those criteria from applicant to applicant. I would prefer that we stick to the council members asking the questions at this time.
Totally understood.
My final question is this one. I apologize for taking so many questions. How do you typically advertise your locations and your product? Do you use local newspapers? What do these ads look like? And what do we expect to see in the city of Sonoma in things like the Sun, the IT, or on Facebook if Coastal moves in?
So for marketing and advertising, there's a few key sites that people do go to, such as Weed Maps, Google, SEOs, those sorts of things that we obviously focus heavily on. But we really do focus on community partnerships. So one thing that always makes us stand out is we do all of the events that we can possibly do. We sponsor every single thing we can in the community, make sure that our name is out there. Obviously, we take into consideration making sure that the event has a majority of people that are 21 and over and those sorts of things. But just really doing as much as we can in the community, and that really drives traffic to our store. I would say that with all local newspapers and radio ads, we wrap cars in coastal. I mean, we do all sorts of unique things. We partner with local restaurants. Bring in a receipt, you get 10% off. We do all sorts of marketing campaigns to drive traffic into the store and make sure that the community knows that we're there.
Okay, thank you very much.
If I may, Mr. Mayor and council members, Cameron Garabicco, I'm general counsel for the company. One thing I want to add on is that the advertising rules within cannabis are very strict. And so one of the things that we're very cognizant of is that we follow those rules and those laws. So what you're not going to see is you're not going to see Coastal plastering its name all over the city about there being a cannabis dispensary that's open. What you will see is a very specific thought out process in ensuring that the market of people that do see any sort of advertisement, and I use air quotes because we have to be very careful, is truly of the age that is legally allowed to participate in that practice. So we're very cognizant of that.
Thank you. David Storr, I understand you have a question as well.
I have a question too, based on your questions, Logan.
Oh, question on questions. I'm going to allow the council member to go first, and then we'll get to staff.
Okay, well, I'm in my kitchen, so it's a little bit loud. Sorry, but this is a question for Jeff Walter. What happens if there's a promised community benefit and then that is not provided? So if they say, I'm going to give $1 million and then they don't have the revenues that support that, how is that enforced?
Our regulations and the original ordinance that the council adopted was based on a set of provisions that contemplate the community benefit being memorialized in an agreement, as well as being memorialized in conditions of approval. So when this council, sometime in August, finally makes a decision and awards one conditional certificate to one storefront operator, there will be attached to that award the conditions that the council wishes to see implemented. And the community benefit component will be a very important one to include and make sure that the promises and the aspirations and hopes and plans that are articulated in a community benefit proposal are transformed into obligations.
So just so I can understand, it kind of makes sense if you say a % of revenue, but if you just say a set dollar amount, which is less than the current capital on hand, how would you enforce it if it did not happen?
If a community benefit includes, for example, contributing 4% of gross revenues.
A different question. If the community benefit says, I will give $1 million, period, how do you enforce that?
The conditions of approval and the contract that accompanies those conditions would set forth a implementation and reporting and auditing component, entitling the city to conduct audits to see if in fact $1 million was spent each year and how it was spent. And if they fail to consistently or at any time comply with that obligation, then the remedies, both contractual and otherwise, would be available to the city to terminate the agreement, terminate the operation, etc.
So can I have a question on a question?
Yeah, we're doing that now. We're like double stuffed Oreos.
I know, tag team. So I wanted to ask, was that $1 million a year or $1 million over a period of time?
$1 million over 5 years is what they're proposing.
Oh, okay, because it was like, I want in. That's a lot of money. Sorry, I expose myself all the time. Sorry.
All right.
If I may interject one more thing, one of the other, I don't want to call it marketing avenues, but one of the other things that's really important to me and our community knows this, there are a lot of events that our not-for-profit partners in the communities throw. So we also set aside a fund to sponsor tables at those events. Those events are generally all over 21 because they generally involve the consumption of alcohol. And as we all know, if you're involved in this community, being seen, being involved, engaged with those various events is really important. And it's a great way to hear feedback from the community, to engage directly with the community. So we also have a fund set aside for actually direct sponsorship and participation in various not-for-profit events so that the coastal team, not just through the outside, but actually the coastal team is there for the community to meet and interact with and get to know us even better as people. And that's really important to me. I want there to be this comfort level that is created with our team and the broader community.
Thank you, Jordan. Let's go ahead, David, with your question.
Yeah, it's a comment and then the question to the council. When we were doing the project review review committee questions, we were in the back end of April, and clearly COVID was on our mind. And we certainly asked the question of each of the proposers about the effect of COVID because they prepared their pro formas prior to COVID. And so they were able to provide us with a response to that. I think it would be helpful for the council to hear that from each of the proposers. And then secondarily, should there be a second or a third retail storefront, if that would also have an effect on their pro formas. So if that's of interest to the council, I'd like to offer that question to you to ask of each of the proposals they go through.
Good question.
See, it sounds like it's of interest to the council, so let's allow it through the gate.
So is it my turn to answer? So COVID had a very interesting effect on our businesses. We saw a huge spike throughout the beginning, first probably a few weeks of our businesses, where people felt that they weren't going to be able to go out and purchase cannabis or any other thing for that matter. And then we saw a decline, probably about 15%, 20% in our stores. And at that same time, we had about a 250% increase in our revenue of delivery. So through COVID, we definitely saw an effect, but it kind of leveled out by the fact that we had a large spike in delivery versus the 15% decline in the retail store. So I think that might have answered it, unless I missed something there, David.
I can jump in the second part, Julian,
Okay.
which is, David, it was a two-part question. The second part was the impact of 2 dispensaries versus 1. In small communities, it will definitely impact both dispensaries' abilities to operate and operate profitably, and it would materially change the commitments we can make in our application. You're taking the same pie and cutting it in half, essentially. So I think from all of our perspective, we will honor the council and the broader community's decision on which way they go. But certainly, I think every pro forma application that was put in was based on 1 dispensary, as that was what was understood at the time. So I would assume that everyone who is presenting today or answering questions would say essentially the same thing, which is it basically takes what everyone's projecting and cuts it in half. Julian, I don't know if you want to add to that, but that's, the way we viewed it.
Yeah. So in other communities, what I've seen happen is they usually will introduce a number of dispensaries based on the population, which I'm sure with Matt, you guys went through that sort of analysis to come up with the 1 dispensary versus 2, 3, 4, 5 dispensaries. And then what we see happen is once that dispensary gets up and operational, you see the tax revenue being generated, you understand the volume of people coming in, because what you have right now is you have 4 very good operators, and in essence, all of us are going to be within a couple percent of each other. Like the market's going to bear what the market's going to bear. So we all went out, we did our analysis, we did the best we could to come up with a pro forma and projections to be able to meet that. But all of us are going to be within a couple percent of each other, because you really have some good operators here standing in front of you. So what I think, what I've seen other cities do, which has seemed to work well, is introduce a dispensary, or in a larger population, maybe 2 or 3 dispensaries, see how that works. And then from there, 6 months or a year later down the road, reopen up for another round of applications. And it seemed to work well. And the cities get to know, understand and know the process and what a good actor is and what they do for the community. And are they fulfilling their commitments, and all of those things are obviously very important to the community, and then go from there. So yeah, I would say that definitely if we opened up 2 dispensaries there, it would drastically change everything that we base our pro forma on.
Can I ask a question to Jeff?
You may.
And I'm just eating dinner. I apologize. I have my camera off. But
Dinner time.
so Jeff, if we later allowed 2 dispensaries, but the original terms of approval included their economic projections, which were a dollar amount, not based on % of revenue, would they be required to fulfill those, or would the conditions of approval be changed if there was a second dispensary?
That would likely be a subject to negotiations. And that the agreement and the conditions of approval would likely need to be tailored to address that contingency. Otherwise, if that doesn't happen and we have very clear, unconditional commitments to spend $1 million over 5 years, then that's what they need to do, no matter what their revenues are, and no matter how many other dispensaries might be permitted in the city.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
if I may speak on that, I would note that I'm sure all the applicants in this process, are the numbers that have been committed are based off of the idea that we were under the impression that 1 retail storefront dispensary would be awarded. So, I'm just to be discussed at a future point in time, if we're lucky enough to be a selected applicant, if others are lucky enough to be brought on at a secondary time. I think that I just want the council to understand that the projections and pro formas, I think probably across the board by all the dispensaries, should have been done based off of the metrics that were provided by the ordinance. So just wanted to add that to the mix.
I don't know what the conclusion of that thought is.
Can you clarify? Maybe I might be able to clarify if you can.
So the broad thought was we made our proposal based on there only being 1 dispensary.
Correct.
And what is the rest of the thought? And what?
So all of our financial projections were very well thought out and very well analyzed in terms of the ordinance that the city of Sonoma put forward, which was that 1 retail storefront dispensary would be awarded. And so we made a commitment based off of actual dollar amount as opposed to a percentage of revenues, such that we could be very clear to the city about exactly what we had every intention to do. So as has been noted, the 1 million over 5 years is quite a large commitment, but we're comfortable doing that. And that's one of the things that Jordan, when he came to us and asked us, what are we willing to do, impressed upon us that he felt was very important and was part of who Coastal needed to be in the community. So to close out the thought, and I hope this answers your question, let me know if it doesn't, is that the $1 million commitment was based off of the 1 retail storefront dispensary that was going to be awarded by the city.
So I would think of it as saying, if there are 2, that is not your commitment.
I can't say that that's not our commitment at all. It really it would bear out in the marketplace to understand what we want to do is we want to make sure that we remain operational and can continue to provide city tax revenue, both to Sonoma as well as, county and state taxes as well. So we want to make sure we're a good operator. We want to make sure we're a productive operator. So I certainly don't want to say that we can't commit that if additional dispensaries are open. I just want to be very forthright with you and let you know that our numbers are based off of the idea that 1 retail storefront would be awarded per the Sonoma ordinance.
Yeah, I can jump into. So we, like you said, a lot of people do it based on a percentage of revenue. We bet on ourselves. So we did our numbers and we said, hey, we're going to bet on ourselves. And this is a number that we can do. But we did that on the circumstances that were provided. So if you go and add 20 dispensaries in Sonoma, we cannot commit that same number because I'm not able to bet on myself. But I could go, if you do that and do a percentage of revenue, that's fine. But I wanted to make it very clear in this application that we're betting on ourselves and we will be able to do that with 1 dispensary in Sonoma. And we did it as a percentage of revenue just on the back side of things and made it very clear to Sonoma City, to everybody what that number was. And we just use a flat number. So yes, it would definitely change as if we add another dispensary, our revenue numbers would go down and therefore our commitment would have to go down.
But it couldn't go down with a condition of approval. It wouldn't be allowed to go down.
Yeah.
With 1 dispensary, right?
With 1
No. If the condition of approval is you said you'd give us $1 million, we don't have to negotiate to accept less, right, Jeff?
That's correct. And if they don't like the condition, then they don't have to open.
Well,
Right.
and it's not
That's
a
what I'm concerned
million
about the
over
dollar.
5 years. So that's only 200,000.
No, I know, but I'm saying all the other applicants have said a percent of revenue, which I understand more easily. because then whatever they make, we're getting a percent of revenue for those things. But if you make a specific dollar commitment, if there are another marijuana dispensary or things change in the economy, you know what percent of revenue you're getting. I'm just curious about the dollar amount, which sounds great for nonprofits, but I am concerned about the collectability of it and the enforceability of it, and then the implied hamstring on a future council about whether or not how many dispensaries they want to have. So I'm just curious. That's why I was asking the questions about whether or not it's enforceable or it's more of a promise. And
well,
I
I
think
can tell you in Santa Barbara, we have Kenny Loggins as our Jordan. So we Kenny Loggins is our charity ambassador here in Santa Barbara, and he allocates helps us allocate the funds the same way. So we're here to do the best thing we can for the community and for everybody. Obviously, if a bunch of dispensaries come and you guys pull that covenant, we can't afford to do that, then we'll close our doors down just like any other business would do. We feel very comfortable that we can provide that with the information that we had when we wrote the application. I've never seen a city like halfway through, add another dispensary or change the ordinance halfway through a merit-based application process. I've just never experienced it. So I just don't know that I have a very clear answer. But Amy, if it would make you feel better to have a percentage of revenue and that's something that you would like us to do, I'm happy to change our application to do that. We did our numbers in a pro forma that we felt comfortable putting forth for you in a very clear and easy understanding. Because if I said 2% of net profits, that other people say net profits is a very hard thing to understand in a business, as I'm sure everybody on here are business people. Net profits doesn't necessarily mean it's very hard. It's actually probably much harder for you to track what net profits are, going through and doing audited financials and all the rest of that, versus I'm saying I'm going to write a check and it's a very clear, I either do it or don't. But if you're going to, most of the applicants, when you read through it, they're probably saying net profits. I'll give 5% of net profits, whatever they're saying. But how do you understand what net profits are without digging into the business and going for understanding every dollar? So I was trying to make it very, very easy for you to understand.
I appreciate that. I mean, my business revolves around looking at finances. That's what I do. So I understand what you're doing and I can appreciate it, but because I'm an attorney and because I've been on the city council for almost 4 years, I'm very aware of how unenforceable a lot of things are. So $1 million sounds great, but I want to make sure that if you're selected, that comes to fruition. And although I see the benefits, I don't really need to ask questions about that because I understand them. But the pitfalls are what I want to have the answers to. So the questions are about the pitfalls because I don't have questions about the benefits because they're obvious.
Got it.
Okay, thank you. Can we move on? I think
I have a question.
All right.
One more question, only because we've gone down this road. Yeah, so I'm putting together your pro forma and your application. What consideration was given to the ballot initiative that is coming up in November, and also just the reality that we have a quick election year coming up and the majority of the council could easily change and the laws could change after that. So I heard a lot of talk about sort of the information, the application based on the information given, but these are just sort of realities of local government. Plus we actually have a ballot measure that's going to be on the ballot.
When putting this together, we did the best we could with the information we had at hand. And so I believe that in a community of your size, one dispensary is more than adequate. I think that I think that you're going to see that it's easier to look over one dispensary, audit one dispensary, work with one dispensary, or one company, I should say. And so I guess that if we're referring back to the commitment of the $1 million, I guess is where we're going, that we did it based on the population size, believing that one dispensary would be adequate for the community, that we'd be able to serve the community well, and that with those we can afford to spend $1 million into the community.
I'm just asking about the consideration of contingencies that come with an ever-changing democratic structure like ours, and specifically the ballot measure that is going to be on the ballot in November.
Correct. So the upcoming ballot measure would, in my understanding, and if someone has better clarity, please, I would allow more businesses to open. Correct. I mean, would change the landscape for cannabis retail
An
operations.
unlimited number of dispensaries.
Correct. Exactly. So business concept first mover advantage, which is really meaningful. One, the being first to the market and establishing our reputation, our name, making the kind of commitments we made, we believe is the right thing to do. And in two of my businesses, I've been first mover, and there's something really meaningful to that. Secondly, we, to Julian's point, are betting on ourselves. And that was why we put this application together the way we did. Julian and I are both business people. Obviously, Julian has much deeper history now in the cannabis space than I do, which is why we partnered together. But we really looked at what we believe and where we've been successful in the past, where they've been successful, where I believe we could be in this community. And to his point, we're willing to take the gamble. To be clear, as Cameron said, that gamble was based on one dispensary in the town of Sonoma so that we could have a great dispensary in this town, and someone that not only provided a great service to the customers, but also provided a great service to the broader community. So yes, there's risk, but there's risk in any business venture. And I believe that we analyze that risk. Obviously, as you correctly said, the landscape is ever evolving, but we'd like the opportunity to open and to show the community what we are and how we operate and what kind of product we're able to provide. And we believe that once we do, all of those changes down the road, we can weather.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and thank Coastal for joining us and going through our question period. I appreciate it, and thank you very much for your time and energy to this project. And we will see you later. So we'll move on to the next group. Thank you very much,
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, who's our next group? I wanted to ask them if they'd have to change their name because we're pretty far from the ocean. But,
Next group is Justice Grown. Mayor Harvey.
Okay, they're out of order like the last time. Okay.
no, Madeline, who's next? Who do you
White
want?
House, but I want it to be justice owned. But I'm telling you, it's out of order last time and it's out of order this time. And that's fine.
Okay, so we're okay with Justice Grown? It's going to work out for you?
I just went through it and I rolled them by.
All right. All right. I don't want to complicate things over there for you, Miss Three iPads, you know? Good. You want to keep this moving? Make it work. All right, and I'll leave it again to Justice Grown to let us know when everybody that they need is in the chat and on the screen. And they've got matching Zoom backgrounds. Oh, except for one.
Okay, it looks like we are all here, Mayor Harvey.
We got everybody? All right, wonderful. So again, the order is, I believe it's Madeline, Amy, David, Rachel, me. So we'll go ahead, and if David Storr is throwing out a question too, we can throw him in there. But let's go ahead and start with Madeline Agrimonti. Are you ready to go with questions?
Yeah, yes, I am, Mr. Mayor. Point of concern I have here, the ownership percentage identified on page 5 of the application form failed to identify and calculate the ownership percentage accurately. That seemed pretty interesting, although I don't know what that might mean.
Sure, I'd like to answer that question. We provided a supplemental follow-up letter clarifying the financial ownership structure, and I can speak to that now if you would like me to, council member.
Yeah, thank you.
So Daniel Lovey holds 16%, John Lovey holds 34%, Mike Cannabis holds 40%, Ken Brown owns 5%, and Joel Matheson owns 5%.
Okay. Thank you. At this point, I don't have any. I have some things that are highlighted. Let's see. Okay. Point of order. It is unclear if the applicant is proposing to conduct retail, this is in business plan, retail deliveries as part of their storefront operation, as I did not indicate so in the application. So, I mean, there's no need for you to run two businesses.
For clarification, we did not check the box for delivery and intended to apply for the retail license.
And yeah, I assume that. Thank you. And I think that's it for me. Thank you. I mean, there's a lot more, but I don't want to belabor this.
And to be clear, retail, just to, correct me if I'm wrong, but a successful retail application would allow them the right to run a delivery operation as well, without checking that box.
Okay.
Okay, great. So we're on to Councilmember Amy Harrington.
Thank you. So in terms of building out your space, if you were the successful applicant, what is the timeline from being approved through opening your doors in your plan?
Estimated timeline at this point would be November 1st. That's pending one of the elements in the location that we're looking at. But the earliest date would be November 1st and the latest date would be around November 20th.
November 1st, 2020.
Correct.
Okay, that's good to know. I think that's all. Do I have any other questions? I think that's it for now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. On to Councilmember David Cook.
Yeah, I guess I'll ask a question I asked before to Coastal. Once you're up and going, how many visits do you feel a day would make you profitable?
Sure. It looks like at our calculations in the third quarter, we're estimating to be profitable. So that would be about 20 customers per hour.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. On to Vice Mayor Rachel Hundley.
Hello. Sorry, I died for a second, but I'm back. Let's see. All right. So, so I'm talking about the business that will be operating this location, but when did your first dispensary open?
Barry Wood opened his first dispensary in 2007, which was Peace and Medicine. Jewel Matheson opened her first dispensary in 2004, which was Sonoma Patient Group. And prior to that, it was the Caregiver Compassion Center. But the Sonoma Patient Group was the first dispensary to open up in Sonoma County and one of the earliest dispensaries to open up in the nation in 2004.
And how many locations are currently open?
We have one location that is in Bennett Valley, which is our cultivation center. We have a distribution, processing, and manufacturing center in Santa Rosa. We have a retail location on Petaluma Hill in Santa Rosa, which is slated to open in September. And hoping to open up the Sonoma dispensary in the fall.
Can I have clarification about that? How many stores do you currently have open?
We have 2 current storefronts open, both in Pennsylvania.
Okay, thank you.
Under the Justice Brown brand, our 2 other owners, Barry Wood and Jewel Matheson, have dispensaries that are open and operating currently.
And then when did those 2 open?
Peace and Medicine was in 2007, and the Sonoma Patient Group was in 2004.
But of Justice Grown currently open storefronts, which I understood to be 2, when did those open?
2017 was the first one, and in 2019 was the second one.
And when specifically in 2017 and 2019?
John, can you speak to the specific date?
Yeah, it was at the end of 2017 because it got up and running in 2018.
What about the one in 2019?
That's the one in Dixon City. It's been open since the end of last year, and it's now got its legs in 2020.
What does that mean?
When you first open, you're still working out the kinks. It's now fully functioning and operating and on its feet. And, I think it's profitable.
I actually don't know what that means, but what is the date that it was open to the public?
I am going off memory, but I would say it opened in the public late in 2019.
Okay.
We kind of like to say when the dust settles.
Yes.
And for Justice Grown, how many applications or RFP, RFQ responses do you have pending right now?
We don't have any pending except for some dispensaries in Illinois. As we mentioned last time, we've been successful in winning them. We were awarded 2 of the 14 dispensaries in the entire state of Utah, for example. So those aren't pending, but we're now working on opening our dispensaries in Salt Lake City and St. George's County. So that's an example. We also have, not pending, but have won 3 of the 36 dispensaries for the entire state of New Jersey, and we are opening those as well.
My next question, for your local reps, Jewel and Ken, what is your involvement and what will be your involvement if this business opens?
Okay, Ken Brown here. Thank you, Council. I would be facilitating ongoing discussions with the council and the staff on how Justice Grown can be good community partners.
Can I add anything?
I mean, that's all I have.
And for my last question for now is, so who will be the day-to-day operations manager? How's that person selected?
Barry would be the day-to-day operations director when we first get the dispensary up and operating. And as we settle in, we would hire managers, shift managers to be the primary point of contact throughout the work week. Barry would be the operations director who would be on site at the dispensary initially.
And I actually have one more question. So based on the last meeting and the questions asked, so you all came in with sort of lower expected daily numbers. And I was wondering if you had anything to add about that, about why that is or what it means and
historically,
philosophy.
Thanks for asking the question. We've found that if we plan for rather conservative financial models, we end up faring quite well. So the model that we put together matches that. And so it's not quite as ambitious as what some of our other the other great applicants have proposed to you, but it reflects our experience, our over a decade of experience in operating cannabis retail space, and gives ourselves quite a bit of room for error with a more conservative model.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, the coastal guy acknowledged, and I think properly, that all of the 4 operators here know what they're doing. So it's going to be a difficult choice for the council, but we did not mean to imply that we weren't going to get as many customers as somebody else would. I mean, we, as Siobhan said, try to be conservative, over deliver, rather than be the team that, makes big promises and then can't keep.
That's all my questions for now.
Thank you very much. All right, on to me. So with regards to community benefits, what organizations do you currently have relationships with, and what services do you foresee providing?
Sure. So one of the first things that we did when we asked ourselves what community organizations we wanted to partner with was to look at what issues were plaguing the Bay Area. And it was brought to my attention, as many of you may be aware, that Bay Area is a hub for human trafficking. And so we decided to reach out to Verity, which is the nonprofit of the year in 2019, as well as in 2018, selected by the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors, to see what their wish list was and how we could support them. And so we decided to allocate over 5,000 square feet of space in our dispensary in Santa Rosa for Verity to expand their services. So that is the nonprofit that we have focused on supporting the most. In addition, we provide emergency housing for victims of human trafficking. We've been doing that since 2018. We've also donated over $1,200 to Verity in our last community fundraiser. In addition, we sponsored a flood relief fundraiser last year for the Rio Nito Roadhouse, and we're able to raise about $1,500. And again, these are all things that we've done historically, which is what we've chosen to highlight in our community benefits section, to show you folks that we've been showing up and being good community allies for years now. These are not just promises that we're making the community, but things that we've been able to uphold historically. We also sponsored an expungement event put on by the National Diversity and Inclusion Cannabis Alliance. Our company covered the filing fees and drafted the filing documents for over 60 individuals. We would commit to furthering the support of our veterans through bringing this program to Sonoma and offering pro bono legal representation for our veterans in need. I'd like to talk about things that we've done to support wildfire prevention and how we showed up to support the Bennett Valley firefighters during the Nuns Canyon fire. As I mentioned during the last presentation, we raised and donated over $4,000 to the Bennett Valley Fire Department. And during the fires, one of our brave colleagues at the time stayed on site to fill the fire trucks with water from our well and kept the generator running to support the water pump. So in addition to saving 6 homes on the neighboring, 6 neighboring homes adjacent to the farm, we've also continue to mow our neighbors' lawns. We have quite a few senior folks who are seniors in our community and our neighborhood who are otherwise not able-bodied to mow their own lawns and create that fire setback. So we take that on ourselves and help those neighbors out each season to help them with wildfire prevention. In Sonoma, we've identified a few local organizations that we would work and partner with. La Luz, we've identified we would want to work with them to develop our local hiring plan and recruitment plan, in addition to Pets Lifeline and the Cancer Support Group, which is represented with one of the founders on our community impact board.
Have you reached out to these local organizations and developed a relationship with them, or is it a hopeful thing for the future?
Yeah, we have. We've reached out to Maria Castillo, who is on our community impact board. We've reached out to Bill Borum. I believe he's written a letter to you folks about involvement with our group. And Bonnie Joy is also a member of our community impact board. So Joel Matheson has had relationships with these folks for a number of years now and has been a community ally with them on a variety of different projects. But in discussions with Justice Grown's goals and community impact targets, we've had a number of conversations with these folks.
Can I just jump in and say one thing about the Community Impact Board? Many of you know that I'm a breast cancer survivor, which was, I'm so excited to be working with Bonnie Joy. I feel like she and I are going to do so much good. We've already brought Dr. Holter, a cannabis specialist, to our city. She has office hours now. We've been doing educational forums. I think we've done alone in Sonoma 18, just in the city of Sonoma, not including the county. So I'm just so excited with that synergy of the hospital, the Cancer Support Network, and Bonnie Joy and I, both as cancer survivors, to be able to offer cancer patients other resources. Everyone knows that whenever you go through an illness, a cancer, there's a lot of unexpected things that come your way. And I've just been so grateful for all the help and assistance that I've gotten from the Cancer Support Network. So I'm excited. My new title will be Community Outreach Coordinator, and I'm really excited to continue that work in Sonoma with Justice Road. And, you know, to be honest, Ken and I had a few different operators come and ask for partnership, and I really didn't really want to step in. Sonoma Patient Group is, you know, we're a small mom and pops. We didn't have the money for that. And then I ran into Siobhan, and she started talking about the Justice Grown, the organization she was working for. And you know that both Ken and I are very political. And that has been an important aspect of Sonoma Patient Group. He laughs. So we've been involved with ASA, Americans for Safe Access, moving this ball forward of the political ball of marijuana, which has been so maligned. When you look at what's been done in the name of the drug wars, we need to rectify that. If we're going to move forward with any kind of integrity, we need to look to right some of the wrongs we've done, which is why Ken and I decided to step in with Justice Grown. I looked at their website, and again, not things that they're promising to do. They've already expunged records of cannabis convictions that should have never even have been there in the first place. Always communities of color. Okay, I'm getting hyped up on my soapbox here. I won't do that, but that's why I stepped in. I'm so excited to be part of this cleaning up of the mess that we've created with the drug wars. And I don't know if you want to speak more to that, John, but really, it's your work that made me want to step forward.
I appreciate that, Jewel. As Jewel's alluding to, you know, our
And we've lost him. Let's go ahead and give John a moment to reply, join back in, but I have another question and perhaps Siobhan can answer it.
Sure.
As we wait John to come in. Same question that I asked for the previous group. When you go about selecting a location, kind of what are the metrics that you're looking at? What's your approach to that?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Obviously, one of the first things that we check are setbacks from daycare centers, schools, playgrounds, sensitive areas, youth centers, libraries. We really look at neighborhood compatibility. It's really important to us that our neighbors are comfortable with what we're doing and excited about the opportunity to welcome us as new neighbors. We look at traffic exposure and sufficient parking. That's very important as we grow and expand, that we have plenty of parking on site for our customers. And accessibility is important to us. We look at a safe path of travel for pedestrians, in addition to a safe path of travel from the parking lot to the point of entry. And one thing that we've learned over the years that's very important to look for are overhead fire sprinklers. This is a very costly enhancement to make to a building and can interrupt a quick opening date if this feature is not already within a building. So pretty simple, but in the town of Sonoma, with it being so small and inventory being what it is, it's quite challenging to find suitable property that meet all of those requirements. But our team has been looking for quite some time, and we're really excited to present to you the locations that we found.
Thank you. I'm not seeing John back in yet. Is he one of the attendees now? Has been able to? I'm just getting a Skype.
He's calling.
Well, Siobhan, if you want to, just to fit it, we can button up that point and then move on. If you can describe some of the work that Justice Grown has done on expunging records, we can hear that, and then we'll go along.
Sure. Yeah. So John founded Lovey and Lovey, which is a civil rights defense firm based out of Chicago, and they have a long history of representing people who have been wrongfully convicted pro bono. So if you were to go to the Lovey and Lovey website homepage, you can see a lengthy list of news articles, PR, and excuse me, guys. That's John trying to call in. Speaking to the law firm's history. So it's quite inspiring. And as Joel mentioned, it was one of the reasons that I was originally attracted to the company. Just its history of incredible work serving not just underserved communities, but communities that have been impacted by the drug war and the racial injustices and disparities that exist in this country.
All right. Thank you. Do we have any additional or follow-up questions?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, David, again, if we could ask the question about the COVID response to the pro formas and also the future for the impact their pro forma may have if we open up to more than one dispensary.
So we'll allow it.
Oh, COVID, is that the question?
The question, did you hear the question? So the question is,
It must be so frustrating.
Siobhan, if you want to take a moment to take the call from John so you can kind of explain what's going on, and we can fix that.
And Mayor Harvey, maybe one thing that we could do is if he can't get back on Zoom, maybe Siobhan could just put him on cell phone on speaker and he could participate that way.
That works too.
We can go old school.
All right. John, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Sort of. We can get it as close to a mic as possible, Siobhan.
Yes.
Wherever the mic is on your device, hold it right up to there.
Okay.
Can we try again, John?
I appreciate it, Mr. Mayor. I was right at the most important part and my computer died, so you'll have to bear with me. But I did want to make the case for us. I started to say that we are a civil rights law firm that has done a lot of important work and that has fused our cannabis company and has driven us. And for that reason, we are extremely committed to the community causes that Siobhan was referencing, including financially. And Siobhan talked about relatively modest sums that we've earned by fundraising and such in California. And the reason those sums are relatively modest, keep in mind, is because we don't have an open dispensary in California. And so we're pre-profitability. So the money that we're contributing is through fundraisers and such. If we are fortunate enough to be one of the companies chosen in Sonoma, or the company chosen in Sonoma, we are committed to a financial contribution equal to any of our competitors. I explained last time that we want you, the city of Sonoma, to be able to choose the best applicant and not have to worry about, well, one's going to offer a little more money than the other. So we are equally committed to donating $1 million. And
You better not say that. The last people got ripped open for it.
The last people, in fairness, equivocated a little bit. And I give them credit for their integrity, because what they were saying was, you know, if things change, then we might have to change. And believe me, you'd rather have them say that now than later.
Right.
But what I would like to say to you,
I agree.
what I would like to say to you is that this is going to be a hard decision by Sonoma, and as the coastal guy admitted, you couldn't go wrong if you picked any of them. So I feel that we're obligated to try to distinguish ourselves. And the way we will distinguish ourselves is we will make the commitment unequivocal and bet on what happens in the future. If it breaks against us, we're still going to honor that commitment. And Council Members Harrington's question, is that enforceable? It is. It's essentially a contract. We are going to commit in writing to donate this amount. And it's a contract just like any of the city's other vendors, whether the council turns over or anything, it's an obligation. We also have recently secured funding, which we can, we didn't get asked the financial question, but we now have a $25 million line of credit, which we're basically about to draw $3 million on. So we are good for the $1 million. So what I'm saying to you, City Council, is if you see fit to pick us, we will honor that pledge of $1 million no matter what happens, including things don't break our way and competition arises, because we have demonstrated that we can thrive in competition. And more importantly, the worst thing that would happen is we would be using cannabis money, not necessarily to profit Justice Grown, but to give back to the community. So we're presumably not going to be operating at a loss if we donated $200,000 a year. We're going to make more than that. What it really means is it might be an uncomfortable amount of money to donate because it might be a high percentage of profits. But as Jewel said, we are community minded. We live our values. And if we have to become a quasi nonprofit because we're giving away a large portion of our profits, then that's what we'll do, because that's what we're about. That's why we're in cannabis. The people that own our company have a lot of money, and they're in cannabis because they want to use a drug that has historically caused so much pain in the community to give back to the community. So it would be to honor that pledge. I'm sorry, I hope you guys can still hear me.
Yeah. Okay.
So I have one more question that our planning director reminded me of. So in your planning and your application and looking for the future, like, what contingencies have you made for the November ballot being successful, and or the political landscape changing and the number of dispensaries shifting?
Yeah, we've talked about that internally, and John discussed with you folks at our last hearing an offer that we could make with the city. We are of the opinion that it was a good balanced compromise to not adjust or rather impact the local flavor and character of Sonoma with too many dispensaries on each corner. But we do honor the democratic process, and if council decides that the city would be better served by more than one dispensary, we'll support that decision. As John has mentioned, we've thrived in competitive markets before, and many folks think it's easy to operate a cannabis dispensary, but lo and behold, there are tricks to the trade, and our team has weathered that storm. So I'm confident in our ability to launch successfully and sustain a business throughout the ever-changing tides, which is the cannabis industry. It's one thing that we've all learned at this point, is that we just can't count on the environment staying the same. So our ability to adapt and be flexible is part of the reason that we have been successful and been in the industry as long as we have.
Siobhan, I have a long-standing relationship with John Early, the man who was behind the ballot measure. I have ongoing communication with him, and I feel that I'm best suited to work with John on how we move forward with both the ballot measure and if he chooses not to have a ballot measure. He is aware of all of the contingencies, and he's a good guy, and if the ballot measure goes on the ballot, believe me, I understand the ballot measure. I understand the process of what it takes to put something on the ballot, and that power of individuals in the community to steer their own course into the future. And it wouldn't serve me or the citizens or Justice Grown to ignore John Early or to denigrate John Early. I think he wants to provide a service, and I'm willing to be there for him to help him.
Mr. Mayor, could I just share something? First of all, thank you. Thank you, Jewel. Partnering with Bonnie Joy is amazing.
Because she's so dynamic.
I know. The two of you,
everyone.
Yeah, and the two of you, thank you, Ken, for offering what you said just now about John Early. I appreciate that. Jewel, like I said, I think Bonnie Joy is an amazing person, and I'm so glad that the two of you, having served on the hospital board, one of the first things we wanted to do was to be able to get free mammograms for women, and that's exactly what we've been committed to. So I appreciate your bringing that issue up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any additional questions for Justice Grown?
Oh, I just have a comment. I'm a fundraiser. That's my profession. And
I have your sign on our lawn, Madeline.
oh, thank you. Thank you. So the thing is, when you make a commitment, a pledge, it doesn't have to be 3 years. It doesn't have to be 5 years. It could be 8 years. So when we keep talking about $1 million, that's why I wanted that to be there was a clarification. And whatever that agreement is, it could be stretched out, but it's still $1 million. And for all of you who are applicants, I think people should hear that. It's not like we expect you to plunk $1 million, although I'd love to win the lottery and maybe I could do it.